Welcome back. Thank you once again for hanging out with us. This is the one and only IT in the D Show. I'm your host, Bob Waltonspiel, hanging out with co-host, producer extraordinaire, Randy Walker. Guest this week, we got Brad Mitchell in the house. He's the president of MojoHost. This is going to be a great story. He's my first client, my first friend in this business. We got a lot to share, a lot to reminisce. Haven't seen each other in a couple of years, so it'll be good to catch up. And we are recording, not live. Are we recording live?
I mean, it's live to disc, and then we publish it later.
Fine, we're recording at the Detroit Podcasting Company, or the Detroit Shipping Company. I think it's our third show, second show that we're recording here. Still getting used to it, so but we're happy to be here. It's a great space. You can find us online, itinthed.com, and do us a favor, give us a like on the socials, subscribe to us everywhere. Fine podcasts are sold. Don't forget, February 20th, meetup.com/itinthed. Randy and I will not be there. The cats are out, so mice are going to be able to play. So I think we got a couple people that are going to be hosting, but we got an IT running at the Detroit Shipping Company that's going to be hostless. So don't forget, no business cards or no cover, no speakers, no idiots, just a bunch of IT folks hanging out and having some beers.
It's a great sign that our network can run without us being there.
That's what I was hoping. If I get hit by a bus, can the events run? Nobody cares if I'm there anyway. So yeah, why not? Let's go.
They were asking for you last time.
It lies, all lies. Brad, how you doing? It's awesome to see you.
I'm doing great. Thanks, Bob and Randy. Thank you for having me on your show tonight.
Absolutely. So I got to start with the original story because it's one of my favorites. I tell people this all the time, and they said, the company that I worked for, from selling beer, I was selling basically co-location and bandwidth. Not knowing what it was, but I knew, but I didn't know. And you were one of my first clients, and it was a quarter rack in co-location, and it was a 10 meg burstable Ethernet handoff. And that was the birth of MojoHost. I remember what you paid too.
What did I pay?
It was
800.
No, because everybody was 95th percentile, right? On sustained bandwidth on a burstable. We were average, so we were 50%, and it was $1 a meg. So if you averaged 10 or 5 meg for the month, it was like $500.
Crazy.
Yeah, and those were the days when a DS3 was, I remember list price was $15,000 because I sold one to Ford.
Well, Bob, we've come a long way today. I'm buying bandwidth at 5 to 7 cents a megabit, which is worlds different than $100 a megabit.
That's insane. I want to get there, but like one of my favorite things about you. So you started like just as a web hosting company, as everyone kind of back then we called it shared hosting. Do you remember those days?
I do. I mean, it wasn't even shared hosting. I mean, back then I would say it was more of like an online grifter. I was just trying to figure out how to pay the bills. I quit my day job. And
what were you doing anyway?
Before all of this, I worked for a large local medical company that was a family-owned business, and I was doing medical billing and accounts receivable.
Oh, geez. That's a shift.
Real exciting stuff.
Right.
So after 7 years of that, but still in my early 20s, I quit my day job and ventured out on my own. And way back when it was, basically I bought someone else's online marketing business was how I first got started.
Okay.
So I didn't start really as a web host. I started as an online marketer that had some things, a bunch of them maybe that each made a little bit of money. And it was over time that I ended up as a web host, because shortly after buying from you, I had like a couple extra megabits and a few U in a rack. I thought, I made some friends online. I could sell some of that excess to try to pay the bills.
Sure. Those are the days when I was selling T1s to like Podunk, Michigan for like these guys out of their house running dial-up ISPs. Every once in a while, I'll still go on and look and see if the websites are still active. And like some of them actually still are, with the original from 1998, the website with the pricing for dial-up and ISDN circuits, the 128s.
That's hilarious.
Right. Like, but then I remember the big day was when DSL came. It was North Point and then BigNet came out and bought out pretty much the whole data center. And we're selling $20 a month, I think it was, for DSL. a month, and like the whole like everyone got rid of their dial up because that was the worst. I mean, me and you were old enough. Randy, you might not be. Where your mom would pick up the phone when you were on your dial up, and you're like, get off the computer, Bobby.
Oh yeah.
And then when DSL came out, we're like, and that was a selling point. Hey, Mom, we got to get DSL.
Oh, my parents live in the country, so they were on dial up until a few years ago.
Oh, jeez.
They got satellite, and it's not much better, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I was on back then it wasn't the internet yet, but I had a bulletin board when I was in 7th grade.
Oh my God.
So I had both a Wildcat and a Tag BBS, and when
it was a Tag. All right.
When I wasn't busy playing the first version of SimCity or trying to multitask with desk view before Windows.
You're a little older than me then. I started 7th grade is when I started with GeoCities.
Yeah. We've come a long way, but back then I guess I was hosting stuff too, but probably nothing my parents would have liked to know about.
We were hackers because we know how to break a CNET because our one friend had a Commodore BBS. And all you had to do was call it 3 times in a row and it would crash it. So we would do it like at 1 a.m. when we knew he went to bed. That was a crazy thing. I always tell this story. Our favorite BBS was Yogi's Cave, and it was out of Royal Oak. And it was 248. So that was long distance for our house. And so my buddy's older brother he had the anarchist cookbook, and I don't know where he found it, but it was like a freak code.
It was everywhere.
Right, but it was like a freak code, and we ran it overnight, and we had these 7-digit AT&T codes. So we used, went on Yogi's Cave for like 3 months all day, every day, until my dad got like a $2,000 bill. And then my little modem went in the garbage, and I was basically strung up by my hee-hees for about a year. I still look back at those. That was fond. Those are the good days.
Yeah, I remember having to meet some shady character at the end of my street in 7th grade to buy his US Robotics 19.2 modem,
yeah.
I think.
The 14.4 was I had a 19.2.
And then we would a group of us would meet in Livonia once every month or two to play Dungeons and Dragons way back when.
Did you do I never got into the LAN parties. Did you ever do those?
No. I don't think I was smart enough.
So my buddy, he used to call like the basement group. I think he had a .com at the time. And I was like, and I'm thinking about this, like bringing a Switch and a PC and a monitor to my buddy's basement. There's so much goddamn work. I'm like, I don't want to do it.
Were your LAN parties like my LAN parties where we would get together, order snacks, and then take 8 hours figuring out what game to play and then make sure everybody had it installed.
And then arguing.
And then go home because you didn't have time to play.
Randy, I never said yes to a LAN party. That's my,
gotcha.
I don't know if that's my claim to fame or that's, I wanted no part. I'm not lugging things around. My daughter does that crap. She walks in the house and I bought her like a, whatever 40-inch monitor, like the curved gaming monitor. And then she built something at, it's a place on 14 in John R.
Micro
Center. She built her own thing. Like when she was like,
I mean, the only place in our Michigan universe that you can go to buy electronics and consumer equipment without reaching all the way to China through the internet.
Yeah, pretty much. Or being shunned by people that are like, you still buying this crap, loser. You know what I mean? I think all those people that work there are like one of us type of, so back to the hosting business. Like everyone's talked about doing their own thing, or we should do this, or we should do that. Like, how the hell did you and you said you bought a smaller company, but like, it's got to be tough, like just getting out and marketing. Did you just like say, hey, cheap prices, good service, let's go? Or like, what was, do you remember how you even got jumped into this?
So back in the beginning, what I bought on the internet, I got defrauded on by the seller. So everything I bought was garbage. So I had to do that, lawyer up, start over. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a web host. It was just some websites, marketing. But it was really it's been a constant reinvention for 25 years. So shortly into doing this, I obviously had my own server, and then I had started to rent some space to other people, but it took me a few years. It wasn't until, 2002 that I decided to officially put up a hosting website and start selling hosting. I met somebody that was technically more adept than me at a command line in Linux,
wow.
at least as a hobbyist.
Right.
And so we shook hands, and that was more or less the origin of MojoHost, as it started as a web host.
So I've known you for, I think it's 25 years going on right now. I've never told you this story, and I'm telling you this live on my podcast. It's almost one of the reasons why I quit being a salesperson in tech. I was at Vario, and I got like the rock bottom price from like my senior VP. And I remember you were super excited about getting this price because you could offer it to your customers, right? And you were like, let's go. And you were driving it to my office in Livonia. And it was end of quarter. Let's say it was March 31st, whatever the day was. And you got in an accident.
Oh, geez.
And you called me and said, I won't be at your office. I'm in an accident. I'm like, why are you calling me? Are you okay? Like, do you need anything? You want me to come get you? Right. And now it's like, I go, just see me whenever, dude. Like, I didn't care. You know what I mean? Like, why would I care? My boss from Chicago, he's like, hey, man, did that deal come in? And I said, no, he got in an accident. I'll see him Monday next week. I don't know. I don't even know if he's okay. Like, he just, he's like, do you think you can drive out to the accident site and pick it up from him? And I literally just said, I go, F you. Like, fuck,
that's how you know you're working for the wrong company.
Well, that guy, like, I think I quit. It couldn't have been a couple months later. Like, I was like, get me out of here.
His name, Mark? Maybe?
No, I do not remember his name. He was only my leader for like 2 quarters, maybe. That's the running joke in IT sales. Like, how long you been here? We're like 16 quarters. Like, cause like all this gray hair. I'm 32 years old. It's gray and bald. It's, but like, I swore, like, if anyone ever did, like, so I don't know if that was a blessing or not, because like after that I said, if anyone ever does that to me ever again, I go, I will never end a quarter at customer. Like, I never end a quarter you. I think it was just how the dates fell or something. Or maybe my boss said, if he gets it in today, then we'll honor this. But who knows? But anyway, I was so like, I almost got out of the industry. I was so disgusted.
I mean, as a buyer, that was always one of those things that really turned me off. I'm buying for a business, not for
your
the end of a month or a quarter,
your
or
earnings reports.
And I think that speaks volumes too about how we manage our own client relationships, where we don't have any of the requirements. We don't motivate sales that way, not internally or externally.
I know that's the way. I'll never forget when I worked at Cisco and they put on the big board in Vegas one time for our sales kickoff, and they go, if anyone has an idea how we can get 1 point of margin better as a company, it'll be this much better, whatever the number was. And I'm like, stop to it, because their end of year was July, because they had their CFO was retail, so like he wanted to not have it during Christmas, and he implemented the same fiscal for Cisco. Made no sense. But just like EMC was back in the day, everybody was conditioned to buy their shit in July, because Cisco would, oil up and basically drop their pants and say, thank you, may I have another. And I'm like, God, if they just stop doing that. So now I think that's the only good thing about like today is the AWSs, the Databricks, of the world, they're all on monthly. So they don't, they're all selling platform. It's all data ingestion. So like for them, it's like, I know it's your end of year. And he goes, yeah, don't worry about it. We don't push anybody. I'm like, thank God. Like, I'm glad that those days are over. I think some people are still doing it, but like, there's not that much left.
For sure.
The one thing I do, the story's construed, so I need it out of your mouth, because I remember you telling me, and then as telephone, it gets told, you had to go to Miami because you ran out of bandwidth in Detroit. And it's something about you're using more bandwidth than Ford Motor Company. But like I said, the story's been like, this is like going back, 15 years probably?
Oh, it's more than that. I think we're a solid 20 years.
Okay.
Right around there. Yeah. So way back then in Detroit, data center, of course, the center of it all in Michigan is actually here in Southfield, where the internet connects.
Yep.
When people started to finally publish video on the internet, it was a big deal, and it more or less broke everything. So it turns out that obviously the internet is organized. Folks from Hubs on Wheels in Detroit is really none of those things. It spoke off of the hub,
right?
Either in Chicago, Atlanta, New York, or Ashburn, kind of in the middle of things. So it was not possible back then to buy competitively for a global audience bandwidth.
Okay.
So basically my price per megabit was too high here. And so I was...
How much did you have at this point? Like,
It wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't that much. I mean, it seemed like a lot back then. I don't remember my exact price point, but I'm sure it was tens of dollars per megabit, maybe 30 or more dollars. I think we're just talking about gigabits.
Okay.
Just gigabits of bandwidth.
Right.
But that was a big difference from serving hundreds of megabits. And when you're in a city that only at that time had few accessible carriers, there just weren't any buying options.
Right.
When you're in a market where people don't need to compete globally, then you can't have a good supply side price. So I had started to search for data centers, and I was considering Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Ashburn. At that time, actually, I was buying bandwidth from a company called PCCW Global, which I think is still the name of that network.
Okay.
Perhaps. But it was so much less expensive to buy it out of Chicago and then transport it over somebody else's network to get it here than it was for me to buy an assembled IP transit product in Michigan.
That's insane.
It was pretty insane. I had this strange muxing device too for it. It was like multiple, must have been like OC48 equivalents that I had.
Right. Oh my God, time out real quick. I got to tell a story. My daughter was bitching about the bandwidth coming to the house because she was gaming and it was lagging. And I said, listen, I was like, I got all mad because we're back and forth for like 5-8 minutes. I go, listen, we got the equivalent of 2 OC3s coming into this house and you're bitching about bandwidth. And she like this blank stare on her face. Like, what's an OC3, Dad? I'm like, that's 155 meg bonded 3 DS3s. And she's like, she goes like, okay, she did the boomer thing and like
okay,
goes, yeah, exactly. No, it's not boomer. I was so mad at her. Anyway.
Yeah. So I was talking to the sales rep and he's like, man, I know you wouldn't think that you'd want to have it be in a data center in Miami because hurricanes, but you should come check this place out in Miami.
Okay.
Like, yeah, who would want a data center in Miami? Like, that's absurd. But I went down there and actually came about what is one of the nicest infrastructures in the country. It's the site known as the Nap of the America. So it's right in downtown Miami. It's an entire city block. It's basically a fortress built on stilts.
No windows.
No windows or faux windows. But, 5-6 stories of steel reinforced concrete, millions of pounds of ballast on the roof, and an infrastructure that could keep going. It was actually one of the top infrastructure sites in Florida and in the top 2 or 3 on, I think, FEMA's list for the whole state for critical infrastructure.
I saw a conspiracy reel on Instagram, how you just death scroll, and it was like, look at this building. And it like they showed the Pfizer logo on like the first floor. And then as it pans up to this New York, it's like a 50-story, 60-story.
Last week.
And it's all bricks. And I'm like, that kid's is called a data center. Like, like it's not nefarious, like look at all half the buildings like that are on like the corners, the telco hotels,
For sure. So, I did what any young Michigander would do. I went to Florida, got drunk in South Beach, had a fabulous tour, signed a contract. And the rest is a bit history. So
you're still there though, yeah?
We still are, yeah. So I've got, I think, still about 1,000 servers in that location. We did build our own data center here in Michigan in Southfield just 5 years ago. But
so I want to talk to you about that because I've followed that journey from the first forklift and the diesel generators and I forget how much your table cost, but it was about as much as my car.
Yeah. So every so many years while being in this business as a web host, and by web host, I mean like truly a web host, our forte is in managed services and in renting dedicated infrastructure and building companies, private clouds. But it's always been really as a hoster more so than a data center. But every few years over the last 20 years, I looked at different real estate opportunities to buy or build or retrofit our own and evaluated the pros and cons of doing that for my business. And I think it was 2019 when I saw something I just couldn't pass up. Long story short, I think it was Comcast's initial pop in Southfield that was probably serving Oakland County.
I was going to ask you, I knew it was somebody's
all of Southeast Michigan. So.
I thought it was Secure 24s for a second, like their first data center, which I think
that's actually right around the corner.
Theirs was Savis or something.
Yeah, it wasn't that. It was this, and it was very small. I thought, okay, I'll I'll buy and lease that, and then I'll go do, you know, a reconstruction of it. But I had a real small vision of it, but it changed from, I never used anything that was there, like nothing. You know, and Comcast is so difficult to work with. I've never even done business with them on their fiber or their own
Good
transit because they're awful.
I got to ask the $1 million question. So like pretty much my whole life, I've been trained to tell people to use Colo or now at least, you know, some sort of hybrid IT and Colo and whatever's on prem or whatever.
Nobody should own their own servers. Nobody should use Colo. It doesn't make sense for most business cases.
So talk to me about it. Like,
so there's somebody like me or anybody else that is doing the kinds of things that we're doing that has better economies of scale and can do a better job at it than you can. So, you know, what you're doing when you're working with a managed service provider, if and, you know, buyer beware, you know, you need to do your research to pick the right one, the right fit for your business. But, you know, you're able to leverage all of their economies of scale with staffing, with infrastructure, with support, with redundancy. And those are things that are very hard to buy for yourself at a smaller scale.
Brad, you would probably cringe. There's $2 to $3 billion companies that I talk to on a regular basis that have huge data centers and their own facilities in town. They back up with Zerto on site, like not even redundant bandwidth. And you're like, every disaster recovery human being, if they ever saw this, would cry themselves to sleep for a week. But here's the thing: there's a lot of like, especially in this town, with a lot of like, you know, the old auto and everything. There's people in this town that love those green blinking lights, man.
Yeah, I mean, I love that I now have my data center inside of my corporate campus, my office. I stare through 2 glass walls, and can see. Well, I can't see the blinking lights because we've got chilled doors on all of the cabinets.
Did you? I always wondered if anyone had those. Are those good?
Yeah,
I saw them at a
awesome
trade show once. I think.
I mean, I've got for sure one of the nicest data centers in the whole state. I built it to our specifications and our needs at a much higher standard than everything else that I've seen. It's not necessarily big in terms of the power delivery that we have from DTE, but I've built everything multiple times redundant.
I was going to say that was a big thing. A lot of people would go like, I need Colo. Great. I need redundant power. Like, what?
Yeah. So when I built this data center, I had a goal of the power of basically we have A and B side power. And I had a goal that none of our critical infrastructure inside of the building touch the other side of it. So from the outside of the building where we take a primary delivery of 1.5 megawatts that then gets split to 2 1.5 megawatt transformers and then further delivers, you know, inside of the site, none of the power from either side touches.
I never knew, like, so I know hospitals get first priority on like diesel delivery during a power outage.
Well, I tell you what, nobody in the state of Michigan's got a priority from DTE.
Nobody?
No. So diesel. So sure, diesel delivery, but you know, the one thing you can count on in Michigan or in Southfield in particular is that your electrical service is never going to be consistent or reliable. We get asked all the time how often we test our generators, and frankly, we don't anymore because we have such frequent power outages. The grid is old, decrepit, and actually, when we constructed the site, working with DTE was a very unpleasant experience and extended our timelines. But
you're in the middle of, I mean, what is it called? The Detroit Exchange? Like every fiber carrier in Michigan or Detroit goes through your neighborhood.
Correct. So there's a lot of fiber at the roadside, and we've got 4 different paths going out of our data center to get to different places where we can access other global carriers in the internet. So I have got fiber going east and west over to my good friends over at 123.net.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they run a fantastic business. They have their own data centers in the city of Southfield. Over at that location, we pick up, I think, 400 gigabit from 200 from each of 2 different providers, and another 100 gigabit over to Detroit Internet Exchange that they operate. And then we have another path of fiber going to a different data center across Losser Road. We're in the Melrose business, but across Losser Road, we pick up another global carrier, Aurelian, 100 gigabit over there. And then we've also got a separate fiber path going directly to Lumen in their data center in Southfield.
Huh. Which was
Level 3, which was
Level
CenturyLink,
3, which is
still a company that doesn't make money, whatever it is today.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah. So, in terms of internet and that infrastructure and reliability, we're very, very redundant. We hit multiple tier 1 global carriers plus the local peering exchange with over 700 gigabit of connectivity.
Jeez.
And we're about to change out some of our optics. I think we'll change that about 1.6 terabits.
Okay.
On our next upgrade.
It's almost that like 24-year-old me can't even digest like that.
Well, here's the thing. You've got to get a lot of different things and then also incorporate other really intelligent making to have a good end product. So we do some things with our network product, our IP transit product that nobody else is doing, or is very rare to find anywhere. So, we use a platform called Noction.
Okay.
Noction is an intelligent routing platform that we use. And basically what it's doing is in real time, it's monitoring all of our connectivity to all of our carriers and all of the advertised BGP routes. And it's basically finding and eliminating packet loss in real time. So if it sees packet loss across a destination subnet as small as a 24 or as big as a largest subnets out there, it'll go and reroute our traffic over a different carrier, and then it'll probe all of our other carriers to look for lower latency. And of course, still no packet loss. Because more than anything, what affects how fast your daughter can be on the internet and enjoy her gaming and movie experience, not necessarily the latency. Maybe it is with gaming.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about real video delivery, what you don't want is packet loss because TCP is not that smart.
I just did I was reading an old case study on Netflix, and it's funny how us as consumers, how spoiled we got as soon as Netflix went from DVD shipping to streaming to the house. If it even glitched, yep. We were absolutely filling out forms and screaming and like, it's almost, don't dare call it miraculous that the fact that they were able to deliver almost flawlessly to that many customers that quick.
They did well, and the world being small as it was, and me being a tinkerer and trying to always figure out how to build a bigger, faster, better network, I had actually came across the technology they were using in secret to be good at that. Yeah. It wasn't that the internet was so good or they were so good. What they had actually used was technology that was proprietary called fast TCP.
Okay.
And that was a different algorithm for sending and receiving packets. So for many years, I had sort of repackaged, white labeled that as my own brand. Ultimately, I wasn't able to find commercial success with it. But what they basically did was they kept sending packets, and that worked. Took some special software to it.
Yeah.
And that was ultimately bought and shelved by Akamai.
Haven't heard that name in a long time.
They like to buy things.
I was going to say them and Broadcom, they buy everything. Randy, were you, we talked about this the other day. We had, I don't know if I told you about this, we had the CEO on, the guy that founded F5 Networks. And it's just funny how he told the story of the origin. I had no idea. Like, do you ever hear this story on how he founded it? So he's like one of the four horsemen of the Mount Rushmore.
When's the apocalypse is anytime now in 2025?
No. Let's say one of the four Mount Rushmores of the internet. And he sold stock exchange machines to like Chicago Stock Exchange. So he wanted to open up a new market. So he goes to Hawaii, starts the first ISP in Hawaii, because they really didn't have one. And so he could basically provide connectivity to the Hawaiian Stock Exchange. And they ran like shit, like you'd expect. And so he invents load balancing so they would run, they would optimize.
Right.
And then he's like basically discovered oil and just like,
oh, hey, there's something to this.
Yeah. Then think about what the internet would have been like if he wouldn't have done that, or if he wouldn't have started that IS. You know what I'm saying? Like, sure. It's just funny how all this, like all these byproducts that happen just because of people like you tinkering and figuring out a faster way to do shit.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably the the growth from 10 megabit ports to 100 megabit to gigabit to 10 gigabit to 100 gigabit beyond, all of that originally was driven by probably the blue part of the internet, adult entertainment. Who else was pushing more bits and bytes?
That's all we talked about. If it wasn't like that was payment processing, if it wasn't for porn in the early days of the internet, and if it was like video, like people I don't know if they don't want to acknowledge it or they don't want to.
Nobody wants to talk about that.
No, even though, yeah. But it's funny how, we've been talking about that in this show since I think it started, like that drove every bit, like drove bandwidth needs, that drove pretty much
bandwidth and storage.
Right. Storage is a nickel now too. I remember when that used to be expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, storage is complicated, especially done right. So that's one of the things that we build and sell as a service. Besides having dedicated servers and VPS, like everyone would expect, we actually have our own compute cloud, which is based on our own software technology. We also have storage, like tens of petabytes of storage.
Jeez. So as AI hit, now obviously with intelligent routing, I'm assuming AI's hit. I know my buddy just went to Juniper and they're touting this AI network thing, and I never really dove into it. So I've been out of network for
I'm sure
a few years.
So I'm sure in the networking space there is going to be a ton of opportunity, like in all other corners of technology, improve things, make faster and better decisions. So I have no doubt. To that extent, I don't think I could tell you how it's affecting what their products look like.
So I've seen use cases, the stuff that we're working on at Day Job, of like a supply chain, and it's called like a control tower basically, and it's looking at 2 million points of possible supply chain, and it's giving optimized path. It reminded me of network traffic because it's red lighting and green lighting,
logistic,
where stuff needs to go. And I'm assuming that's been done, via machine learning or something, in the network space. What I'm trying to ask you is, like, in terms of innovation, it feels like in the data center space and network space, it's just following Moore's law, and we haven't seen like drastic innovation. Am I just wrong? Or
I think we're very much before the hockey stick. Like, we're looking at a stock market that's driven by AI with biggest companies and valuation, but the actual use and adoption by small, medium, large companies are still before that growth.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you look at like the stock market and like the things like like open source Kafka and streaming data and data in motion, like that's, feeding like the CNN thing during the election, where like, the real time data ingestion. And that's the stuff like I'm working on now, is just like ingesting. There's so much data in these companies, and
it really changes
everywhere.
It really changes networking. So there's a huge
huge
impact on data communication speeds. Well, so it used to be that storage was the bottleneck,
right?
In everything, right? Because storage only works so fast. And originally, it was mechanical, and then it was memory, and then now it's faster memory, and now it's even faster, and it's connected and running, at speeds of the system bus. So where it used to be a bottleneck, now it really is more 4.0, 5.0. So that, coupled with advances in GPUs, faster memory in there, and how much information for modeling is being calculated and considered, that's really changing networking substantially within local setups of complex servers that might have storage, rendering models. Things are now and future, connected 100 gigabit, 200 gigabit, 400 gigabit a server.
Jeez.
Imagine dozens of those connected to a switch, operating at line rate, connected to other, it's moving faster. So if you think about all of the different spaces and markets that can take advantage of that, whether it's how, say, GM, Ford, or Chrysler.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't work out for them too good, did it? See, they're bringing the Pacifica back, right?
Good.
The LeBaron's next. Wait for it.
That was Le Baron.
Le Baron. I don't know. All of this stuff's changing pretty rapidly. And, this is a case of each company needs to figure out how to use these technologies for their benefit, whether it's customer service, or it's data modeling, or it's in finance, or it's in improving deliveries, or it's reducing the workforce. I think there tends to just probably be a lot of opportunity. Not so much for workforce reduction, but just in terms of efficiency per employee. I think that's really the way that we look at it. When you look at like the history of something as manual as farming, agriculture,
right?
When it used to be so many people per acre or per plot of land, and how that kept changing, and now it's going to be more of the same, except we have to apply that kind of thinking toward larger corporations.
So we're doing like a lot of the things that's more speed to market. I don't think it's getting rid of people. The way we're doing accelerated engineering. It's a fancy marketing name for AI assisted coding, and it's 15-month project we can get done in 6-7 months. So instead, it doesn't mean that anyone's leaving. It just means that we got to book double the projects because we're getting them done. Speed to market's going to be insane. Some cool stuff going on. Did you see NVIDIA coming?
No.
I didn't either. Like, we had a friend of ours who was a successful sold, when I was at Cisco, he was part of that kind of ecosystem, not at Cisco, but all of a sudden he goes to NVIDIA and we're like, what the hell is that? Right. And everybody's kind of like side eyes, like, what are you doing? And he's been there now for like 8 years. And if you go to his LinkedIn, his second job is name real estate holdings with multifamily locations in Boca Raton and Miami. And like, oh, he hit.
I mean, the only place that I got lucky in the Internet of Things was that with my company. Actually, I think thanks originally to Vario, I had an overly generous IP assignment. I think they gave me my first 10,000 IPs. So when I
got those for you.
Thank you, Bob. Not much. So that ended up helping me with my first IP justification when we moved off of Vario.
Yep. Which,
of course, we then continued to add over years to follow. But I mean, today I own more than 90,000 IP addresses. I think they're worth $35 to $45.
Sure. Do you know there was 2 engineers that got busted out of that very office because they basically set up a web host or a ISP like out of and they just brought their own servers in and just plugged it into the core and just sold.
It's easy to look back on the past and think woulda, shoulda, coulda, or to be regretful. But even if I was one of those smart genius guys that had the forethought for Bitcoin, I know that I don't have personality. Wouldn't have been for me to hold on to it for 15, 20 years.
Here's the thing, man, and I don't mean to like lay the butter on you, but like to have someone in this industry, in IT, in tech, in this town last for 25 years. I mean, hats off. Like I know you've been through, I know you've seen the depths of hell and you've done some pretty cool shit too.
Sure feels like it. I think I like to say that it's about like every 5 years is like a generation of business on the internet. So the guard has changed. I think we're upon another paradigm shift here.
But the fact that you've seen it, here we are sitting here with our gray hair to tell the tale of our 300 baud modems. I think it's kind of, what the hell stories are our kids going to say? When I was your age, I had a gigabit to the house and I was thankful. Like, it sounds ridiculous, but I guess,
Yeah, I mean, my business is still small today by comparison to some of the names that you're throwing around. I mean, we're still a privately held company. I've got just over 50 employees. We've got.
Don't take PE. I'm just saying that right now. I know you know. I know you know, but
they wouldn't want me anyways. I'm too interested. Not vanilla enough, but we operate out of 3 data centers. We still have our site in Miami. We've got this large one here in Michigan, and our third is global. It's in Netherlands and Haarlem, just about 20 minutes outside of Amsterdam. So between the 3 sites, I own and operate about 3,000 servers.
That's insane.
So with that, we built all of the different toys and sandboxes that vision to meet the client need.
I was envious of all your international travel in my 30s I was like, wow, that's cool in my 40s. And now that I've hit 50, I'm like, I'm exhausted just following where you go. Cause I know those flights are just hellish.
Yeah,
But I feel like you're in like Eastern Europe, like at least every quarter.
Well, I wish. My wife is from Ukraine, and unfortunately, it's not a place we can go back to.
In Istanbul, I think. What's the last?
Yeah, Istanbul's cool. Great shopping.
You always get me. I
think you'd fit right in at the bazaar, Bob.
Is that what? No, you always get me singing. Istanbul is Constantinople, and it's every time you go, like he's awesome.
I mean, and that's maybe one of the things that worked out for me the best was that in-person meeting and greeting and traveling over all of these 25 years is how I grew the business, made relationships, met clients. Today we service about just over 2,000 companies around the world. About 40% of our revenue is global.
It's awesome.
So it's definitely a global business, and I'm thankful that I've been able to travel, the Americas, North and South America, and Eastern and Western Europe. I haven't done much in Asia, but it's been a heck of a journey.
But see, I was always known as sport coat guy, and you make my sport coat game like put it to shame. Where the hell do you buy those things? I gotta ask. I've never really even prodded you for that.
There's a great men's store, at Greenfield.
Okay.
Email Bob, and he'll tell you where to go.
What's it called?
I don't. It's been a while since I've
Green
been
and
there.
9. All right.
Yeah, there's a few African American men's clothing shops over there, and frankly, there's a lot to shop from it. They got way more interesting style than I'm finding up here and up in the Birmingham, Bloomfield, Troy area. I'm not sure that my prices are high enough to afford a Somerset shopping spree, so I have to get creative if I want to.
My 18-year-old goes, I used my birthday money and I bought these sweats, and I go, oh, they were like $12. No, they were like $98. I'm like, for sweats?
Things have changed
a lot. Like sport coat and t-shirt and jeans. Like I've wore the same crap since I've been 22 years old.
Yeah, actually, one of my funnier business stories is back when my kids were young. I have 3 kids. They're now 20, 20, and 21. Yeah, you heard that right. So I've got twins plus one. And I went to a business conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and had just received a gift which had handprints and footprints on it from all 3 kids, like done in different paint colors.
Okay.
So I wore that, and back then I was still very young, and that helped to get me in a lot of conversation because it seemed like everybody had an opinion, whether it was cracking a joke at me or saying like, oh my God, that's so cool. When they hear the story, like it resonates with some people, and other people thought it was like pretty stupid, but it definitely was a big part of my business journey because I got such a reaction from that. I asked for more shirts for, birthdays and holidays and stuff like that. So I ended up with what ultimately ended up being like 100, 150 shirts.
Jeez.
So, I wore those through, really up until about 5-10 years ago, pretty active, but I was kind of known for that.
Right.
Some of these conferences I would go to.
Well, everybody looks the same. So it's like, how do you brand yourself? So,
that sure did it. Stuck out like a sore thumb.
It's a good thing. And not in the obnoxious way. Like,
not an obnoxious.
We used to always joke at
when you can bring the conversation back to family and something relatable.
Yeah.
We're all going through a thing, especially as we're getting older and we're
away
getting
from
married,
things.
we're having kids, and everybody's away.
The HP conferences were the worst because it was a sea of 19,000 navy blue sport coats, white dress shirts, tan pants, brown shoes.
Yeah, blending in never made me any money.
Yeah. Well, and then you'd see like the 4 guys walking with like bright red shoes, and you'd find, they're from the Spain team or like the Brazil team. Like it was never someone from LA. It was, like, we got to dress like that.
The Dutch guy wearing orange pants.
Seriously, yeah. We were there for World Cup, so yeah, a lot of those guys. But yeah, like that was the thing. Like they stuck out, and it wasn't even a big deal. But anyway, Brad, it was good to catch up with you, man.
Thanks so much.
Let's go get food. We've been overdue for that for a while. So let's get on your calendar because mine's open. So I need to get on yours. But if you want to find him online, Brad Mitchell on LinkedIn, mojohost.com. Find them anywhere fine websites are sold. And appreciate you hanging out with us.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
All right. Cheers, man. So on behalf of Bob and Randy, do us all a favor. Drink up your drinks. Get your phone numbers. You don't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. See you next week. Drive careful. Beat it. Goodbye. I said,